Louis Armstrong is one of the greatest musicians of the jazz age, if not the greatest. He encountered musicians and worked with them. When writing songs, Louis exchanged thoughts and ideas about writing the song. He was a very achieving musician all around, and also an inspiration to others, musician or not. He made a big impact then, and also now. Louis Armstrong, arguably the greatest jazz artist, plays a significant role in why jazz exists today. Louis had a difficult childhood. He had to work hard to support his dirt-poor family. He was born in New Orleans, lived for 69 years, and during that time he made a big impact on music. Only Charlie Parker ever came close to having such an influence on the history of jazz like Louis Armstrong did. At the age of 12, Louis fired off blanks into the air on New Year's Eve. He was sent to reform school at the Colored Waifs Home for Boys, and there is where he learned to play his first instrument, the cornet. The blooming Louis Armstrong started to excel as a musician and began to perform with pickup bands in small clubs and play funerals and parades around town. He captured the attention and respect of some of the older, more established musicians of New Orleans. He then switched to trumpet. Joe Oliver, one of Kid Ory's band members and one of the finest trumpet players around, then became Armstrong's mentor. Joe Oliver was like a father to Louis, even giving him his first real trumpet. Louis Armstrong went to Chicago and then joined Joe Oliver's band in 1922, and in the spring of 1923 is when he recorded his first song. He married Lillian Hardin, the pianist of the band, on February 5th, 1924. Lillian Hardin was the second wife out of the 4 wives that Louis had. 1924 is also when he became a star in New York's top jazz band. However, soon returned back to Chicago, where he was a sensation. Louis Armstrong encountered many musicians and worked with them. Joe Oliver is one example. Because he had worked with him, he gained much more experience, along with gaining popularity. He worked with numerous other musicians as a sideman, producing inspiring jazz music with musicians such as Sidney Bechet, and backing numerous blues singers, namely Bessie Smith. Sidney Bechet was a child prodigy in New Orleans. Some of the top bands recognized him while he was in his youth of that city. He knew Louis Armstrong as a child. Bessie Smith was a great classic blues singer of the 1920s.
Well, my name's Cheloviec, and I'm no musical historian. They would know a lot more than I do, but I do know a couple things about Satchmo that I would like to share with you. Louis Armstrong grew up in New Orleans, and so the music he learned when he was a boy was Dixieland, which was the reigning jazz idiom at the time. And when he grew up and became a man, he, like many jazz musicians from there, moved to Chicago, which was kind of the new jazz scene. And Louis Armstrong is known for having really changed the whole nature of jazz music. Up till that time in Dixieland, most solos were short and incidental solos, which basically consisted of playing the melody again, maybe slightly changed or embellished, but basically just playing the melody like it is in the song. Satchmo realized that he could invent an infinite number of new melodies, new melodic material, by creating melodies off of the chord changes, off of the harmonic structure of the music, and then he could have extended solos that went on for several choruses. And he was the first person to do that, and that changed the whole nature of jazz music and the whole style in which groups played it. When he was in Chicago as a young man, he was a sensation, and the club was packed every night with people coming to see him play. The guys they were mostly guys in those days from the Chicago Symphony, were famously, when they would finish their gigs at Symphony Hall, they would come running over down to the club that he was playing in and pack the place, because everybody wanted to see this young phenom play the trumpet and show this new form of jazz music that he was busily inventing. The other really significant thing about Louis Armstrong that I want to mention is that he was so beloved. His music was so wonderful and so struck the hearts of all Americans that he was one of the first musicians who was African American, where his music was more important than the color of his skin. So he was one of the first musicians to really cross over and become universally beloved and famous for his work, rather than for the fact that he was a Negro, even in a time when America was still a very seriously racially divided country.
But she was known as a rough, violent, and crude woman. Most critics consider her rendition of St. Louis Blues with Armstrong one of the finest recordings of the 1920s. Bessie Smith and other female artists like Billie Holiday emerged during this period of post-war peace, acting as an inspiration and leading the way for future female artists. Louis Armstrong also encountered Fletcher Henderson Orchestra. The Fletcher Henderson Orchestra was the most popular African-American band of the 1920s. Henderson's orchestra was a huge influence on the swing style of the next decade because of the smooth, precisely arranged sound. Louis Armstrong was hired by Henderson in 1924 to replace Joe Smith on trumpet. With Armstrong in the orchestra for only 13 months, the band caused quite a stir among New York jazz musicians who have never heard anything like him before. Louis also exchanged thoughts and ideas when writing songs. When he wrote songs, he would have to exchange his concept on the song that they were making, and then hear the other person's suggestions or ideas about the song. Some famous musicians or bands he collaborated with are Fate Mirabelle's band, Kid Ory's band, Zutty Singleton, Papa Celestian's Tuxedo Orchestra, Joe Oliver, Fletcher Henderson's Orchestra, Bessie Smith, Clarence Williams, and the Red Onion Jazz Babies. These are all just a fraction of the people or bands he worked with. Louis Armstrong made a big impact, both short-term and long-term. Louis Armstrong is a vital reason why jazz music exists today. He recorded hit songs for 5 decades, and they were all heard in film, on the radio, and in television. Louis Armstrong composed dozens of songs taken to jazz standards and appeared in 30-plus films. He was an inspiration to many jazz musicians back then, and still is one today. He started a new era of jazz known as the swing era. This is one example of a jazz song known before Louis Armstrong made an impact. The song is called Darling and was written by Hart Hickman in 1920. This song is written by the Fletcher Henderson Orchestra. This song is called Sugarfoot Stomp. Louis Armstrong was in this orchestra at the time it was written. Sugarfoot Stomp, as you can hear, is more of a swing style song. However, the other song, Darling, isn't so much of a swing style song. As you can hear, Louis Armstrong helped the Fletcher Henderson Orchestra achieve a signature swing style jazz sound. Today, museums are built for Louis Armstrong. Even a park stands in New Orleans in commemoration of him. Louis Armstrong, or Satchmo, was considerably the best musician of the jazz age. He encountered musicians and worked with them. When writing songs, Louis exchanged lots of ideas about writing the song. He was an excellent musician all around and an inspiration to others, musician or not. He made a prodigious impact not just then, but also now. He was a very influential jazz player.